Hey everyone, Lucas from iExplore here. Today I'm wandering around Shinjuku with my favorite two cameras, in fact the only two cameras that I own. And this video is going to be a little bit different. I don't want to talk about camera settings or technical things today. I want to talk more about cameras and photography a little bit more generally. The reason I'm making this video, the motivation behind this video, is that I often get a lot of comments on our channel, but also in other places on social media everywhere, where people kind of question my camera choice, okay? And I'm not offended by that. I don't mind if people are surprised by my camera choice, even when sometimes they are questioning it in a kind of aggressive way. They're kind of like assuming that my camera choice is poor. And in other cases, they recommend different cameras. They say, why don't you use X camera? Why don't you use that camera? The most common being, why don't you switch to mirrorless or something like that? And I want to address that from this perspective of why even choose one camera over the other? Because there seems to be a lot of push for choosing the best camera from a technical standpoint. Or in street photography, it's always about, you got to have the smallest camera. It's got to be small. You can't have this giant camera. You can't do street photography with that. So I want to talk a little bit about why I choose the cameras that I do, but then more broadly, why I actually think the choice doesn't matter so much. And I think it's important not to overthink it. So first of all, I like this giant camera because, well, for a bunch of reasons. One, it's extremely reliable. It does amazing performance in low light. It does autofocus. The autofocus works very well in low light. The battery life is basically endless. It's weather sealed. It's a workhorse. So the disadvantage of it being large, to me, is very small compared to the advantage. But none of those reasons are the actual main reason I like this camera. I like this camera for a very simple reason. It's very fun for me to use this camera. And it's the same reason I love my little Ricoh GR2. And it's also the same reason I haven't gotten a Ricoh GR3. Because when I picked it up at the store, the way I used it was, like, it didn't feel any different. This one is already great. It's already fun to use. I didn't feel the need to have a slightly upgraded version. It wasn't really doing much for me. So I tend to use cameras that are kind of old, a little bit out of date. This is like a 10-year-old camera. It came out 8 years ago, 2012, I believe. And I like them both simply because they are fun to use. I try to avoid choosing a camera based purely on the technical aspects. The technical aspects, of course, are important. But if the camera was technically really good, but I didn't enjoy it, I didn't like using it, I wouldn't use that camera. This might be different for professional work where a client is paying you for that. That's different. Then I might suffer through a camera that I don't like just for the purpose of producing the work that the client needs. But for my own personal street photography, which is something that I do mainly purely for the enjoyment of it, I make sure I use a camera that I like to use, that I enjoy. And that's my advice to you guys, is don't worry so much about the technical aspects of your camera, and don't let people tell you online which camera you should or shouldn't be using for some arbitrary reasons, like how big or small it is or whatever, or because it's the latest and greatest thing. Find the camera that you enjoy using, and if you have fun with it, that's all you need, especially if you're just doing it for fun as a hobby, as an amateur. So that's all I have to say to you guys today. Love your camera, and remember, always challenge your eye.